Welcome to Bread with the Sisters. I'm Raven.
And this is Monica, and today we're talking about the Prodigal Son.
Do it again.
Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to Bread with the Sisters. I'm Raven.
And this is Monica, and today we're talking about the Prodigal Son.
Do it with an English accent.
Thanks for watching Bread with the Sisters. I'm Raven, and this
is Monica.
And today's episode is...
That is funny. Okay.
A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him, and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, Bring forth the best robe, and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf, and kill it. And let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry.
Why is this story very important? I think for me personally, the Prodigal Son speaks to me because I think it's the story that all of us experience. It reminds us of God's love for us. The father had 2 sons, and God has been so generous with his gifts towards us. However, we have taken those gifts and maybe we have made demands towards God, and we have asked him, like, give me my inheritance. And God says, okay, I'll give you what you need. However, just our nature, we go and squander those resources, and we reach a point and we're like, okay, I'm here and I'm suffering, and where is God? So I think it's very important, because I think that is everybody's journey. Don't you think? Have you experienced something like that, where you have asked God for certain things, and then he gives you maybe opportunities or graces, and then you end up feeling like you haven't lived up to it?
Yes, and I think we've all been there, where we've been gifted something precious.
Right.
And maybe we didn't necessarily deserve what was being gifted to us.
Right.
The only reason that it came to us because we demanded it from whomever or whatever that it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow we claim that it was a blessing, but it was something that we demanded. And when we take things out of the time that it should have been given to us, and we squander it, and we wonder, oh, why did this happen to me? Or poor me. Yeah. But I think like the good thing about the prodigal son is that he recognizes that it's his fault.
Right.
And he realizes what he must do. And I think that's an important lesson to learn is
it tells
when
us
I've
of God's,
wasted.
It tells us of God's mercy.
And it tells us of God's mercy.
His mercy.
It tells us the humbleness that we should come to God with.
Right.
But also the mercy that he will extend to us once we are willing to give over to him.
Yeah, but we have to be able to first admit that we are wrong.
Yes.
And admit our faults, and not out of pride. Because most times out of pride, you're like, oh no, I can go back to God. And, and we question ourselves or hide, like, for example, Adam and Eve in the garden. Garden of Eden, they saw that they had done something wrong and they hid. So, but this shows us the humility with which the son was able to recognize his weakness and come back to the father, asking him for forgiveness. So it's also
And
a
that's
challenge.
a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's God already knows. He already knows what's been done. There's no reason for us to cower away from him.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing he wants us to is come back to him, admit that you've wronged him, and then make that recompenses to get back into him, you know?
Right.
All he's saying, come back to me. Come
Right.
back to me. But
Yeah,
you
and
have to be willing to, okay, well, what amends do I need to make?
Right. And even like so many times, God has told us how many times, like, I'll forgive. And even he tells us to, how many times should I forgive? 70 times 7. And as many times, and as long as we're still living, we have that opportunity to seek God and ask for his mercy. So we shouldn't feel like we're being held back and say, oh no, I don't feel comfortable going back to God. But understand that God is so loving and he still wants to have a relationship with us. But we shouldn't just sit there, because holding ourselves back is very prideful, and it limits us from experiencing what God is calling us to be or who he wants us to be. So I think that's, to me, what really stands out from that story is the mercy that God gives to us and the humility with which the son acknowledges his mistake, and for him to come back and ask God, his father for forgiveness. And I think it's the story that resonates with all of us. How many times have we failed in trying to live up to that which God has called us to be?
And you know what was also beautiful was at the very end,
Right.
like what the father is doing, how he's like, gather the people, get the party.
Right.
He's like, my son has come back to me.
That's
It's
true.
like the moment you made the decision, he didn't even have to see you. He
Right.
just knew you made that decision, and he stood there, arms open, waiting for him to come. And it's like, that's all I was waiting for you to turn back to me, for you to make that choice to say, God, I want to take you back into my heart. Like, I'm sorry. I'm
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, I really love that, and that's beautiful. But also, it's also a challenge to us, because many times we demand things from God,
Yes.
and it's like we demand these things, but however, how are we living to that which God has called us to be? It's like, oh God, I want a car and I want a house and I want this, but we forget that also God has demands from us. How are we being obedient, and how are we living to that which he has called us to be? And it's also telling us, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you just squandering and asking God, give me this? Do you come to him and just present a laundry list of things? What's your responsibility? What's your accountability
And
in
what
this
is
process?
the purpose of you loving God?
Right. Yes.
What does that mean?
Right.
Is it mean for him to be this ever giving gift giver, and
Right.
that's it?
Yeah.
Because you just come to him and say, God, I really want this really bad, and I think I'm good enough, and so I just want it. I want it.
Right.
And
I think,
that's it. And then what happens when it doesn't come to you?
Right.
You become scornful.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah, and I think nobody wants to be objectified. Nobody wants to be seen as an ATM machine or a problem solver. Everybody wants to feel like, it's a give and take.
Yeah.
As much as we want from God, we have to understand that he has expectations. We want things to live as sons and daughters of God. Are we being obedient to what he's calling us to be? Are we listening? Are we humble? So all this, he's challenging us. Like, okay, I'll give you these things, but this is also what I demand from
Yes.
you. And it's not only about what we want, but also what he's asking us. So for me, my take home is the obedience,
Yes.
the humility, and also the accountability that God is calling us to live up to that which he's calling us.
Yes, and I think obedience is very important, because what the scripture is showing us is something on a basic fundamental level, and it's the relationship between a father and a son, a mother and a daughter, or whichever way you put it. And that's the same way with God. There's this giving. It's reciprocal in its very nature.
Right.
And it doesn't come without lack of effort on our part.
So, Raven, what are you going to do differently now that after reading that story? How is that speaking to you, and what are you going to do differently or change in your life?
I think most importantly, coming to God humbly and seeking true repentance. That means admitting that I am at fault, and that the reason why I am where I'm at is because simple
of your
disobedience.
your own mistakes.
My own selfishness, my own will to go the opposite direction. Because what the inheritance, I think in a way symbolizes a time.
Right.
It's a time capsule, because the only way inheritance can be given is when the time that it is supposed to be due.
Right.
and it's outside of our knowledge when it will be, because usually what happens is that, you know, the father dies, so we can't predict it. And the same thing with God. I can't predict it. And it's not up to me to just take and grab what I can. I'll be patient.
Also, you to be patient and to live up to it. Well, that's amazing. So,
what about you?
What am I gonna do differently?
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do differently is just to appreciate God's mercy, but also to not look at God as an ATM machine, but just to love Him. To love Him. You know, how do you love somebody? Just love Him, and that's it. And just try to be obedient and listen to what He's calling me to do versus demand from Him and just give Him a laundry list. You know, I mean, it's easy to say, but I'm hoping that with God's grace, these things are possible. So we wanted to talk about the spirituality of
of St. Ignatius. So thank you guys for watching. A lot of what we talked about came from the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. So please feel free to check it out and stay tuned for the next video, which will have an excerpt of it. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in.
Feel free to like and subscribe.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.